Hi, my name's Cameron Richards. I'm an artist from Perth, Western Australia. I largely work with portraits in the realistic or realism spectrum. Hands are hard for myself included, and many artists that I've talked to have always said it's the bane of their existence. There are so many contours and shapes, it's very easy to get lost in the detail. Two main concepts that I'm going to be covering today. Number one is tone, number two is temperature. I think if you can truly get the hang of these, you're well on your way to producing a beautiful set of hands. We're going to basically be working off a small canvas that's primed with a light grey. It just helps you to go a bit darker or a bit lighter if you need to. And we're just using a simple acrylic white and then just a black. I'm going to be going 3/4 white to 1/4 black, and this is super rough. The reference image that you see here has got some really nice mix of cooler points of the hands as well as some warmth through the tips, which really exaggerates what I'm going to be trying to demonstrate today. When you're transferring the image to the canvas, do it however you want. It might be that you go from eyeballing, you might want to grid it, or you might want to stencil it. It honestly doesn't matter. There's no right or wrong here, just whatever's easiest. I've chosen to use a grid to get this reference image on, and then I've just removed the grid. We're basically left with a very light outline of the hands and some of the deeper creases. We're going to be working with oils. I'm using Payne's grey, phthalo blue, light red, and then I'm using alizarin crimson. I'll scoop out some white. You'll basically need two smallish paintbrushes and one very small paintbrush for the final detail. When we're looking at tone, basically what I'm talking about is if I mix my light red with a bit of white, I'm going to get a relatively lighter tone compared to when I mix that same red with a little bit of my Payne's grey. So there we have a lighter tone, a darker tone. Then when I'm looking at the same tone but a different temperature, I'm simply adding in a blue to maybe cool it down, and then a little bit of white to keep it the same tone. There we have a similar tone, but we've cooled it down quite a lot. The same can be had in that lighter tone. Again, mix in some phthalo blue, and then a bit more titanium white. This is basically what we're going to be thinking of when we're putting the colours down. What's the tone like and what's the temperature like? And you can really play with these quite a lot to get nice transitions in colours and different colours at different points of the piece. What I'm doing is I'm looking at my reference image and I'm basically trying to identify the darkest darks and the temperature of those. So if we look for some of the creases through the base of this hand here, it's quite a cool shadow. So we need to obviously mix a fair bit of black to get that tone right, a little bit of phthalo blue, and then a little bit of light red. When I'm blocking that in, I'm simply getting that line on. I then look at the rest of my reference image and I'm trying to find where else I can see that exact colour. It'll look like I'm a bit erratic working my way around the canvas, but it's efficient and it kind of helps to have a consistency to your piece. I will cover every line that I've already put down in pencil, but with the right colour. Now that we've got those cooler, darker points of the shadows, I'm going to be looking for when the temperature warms up a little bit. And then I'm going to go for my alizarin crimson. I'm gonna mix that with a little bit of my Payne's grey, with a little bit of my phthalo blue. And then I'm just gonna knock it back a little bit with titanium white so it's not too dark. And then when I'm looking through, I can see that some of these lines through here are a little bit warmer. And again, I'm now gonna look around to see where else this color belongs. And then we're gonna go to the next level of warmth. I keep exploring around the canvas, seeing where my colors belong. I don't need it to be perfect at this stage. All I need is for it to be relatively the right tone and temp compared to the other colors. Every now and then I will clean my paintbrush to make sure my colors aren't getting too muddy. Now that we've roughly blocked out a lot of those darker points or the shadows, we're going to now move into the treacherous territory of trying to get those mid-tones in. If we look at our reference image, we can really see a distinct difference in temperature through these areas, and this is what I want you to nail. So same concepts, trying to get that tone and temperature right. If I'm working through this section here, I know that it is quite a lot cooler. So I'm going to mix titanium white with a little bit of my Payne's grey, and then we're going to test that by putting it on the canvas. And I'm going to sneak it in between 2 points of my creases. Tonally, I don't think it's right. So we add a little bit more of your Payne's grey to darken it. Let's see what that does. I think that's closer to where we want to be. So now I'm going to try to, again, figure out where else that colour belongs, block it in before I then move on to the next. And this stage, it may feel like a bit of a slog, but once you then move on to the second and third stage, everything comes together really nicely. So if you can be patient, it pays off. When you can start gently blending the colours together, which will just make it a nice softness to then add your harsher detail lines later on. And then I'm just moving section by section, really observing the reference image and trying to get a likeness. When we're painting, our brains will try to tell us what we should be seeing or what we expect to see, and quite often it's not accurate. So, you know, when we're doing these points, we think, oh yeah, it's dark, then it's light, but no, there's actually all sections of light coming through that darkness, and if you can break that down more and more, you'll get closer to your reference image or creating a realistic look. Through this section of the thumb, there's just the most beautiful, rich reds coming through. And now that I know where everything sits, I know that I can actually punch quite a dark tone and quite a high vibrancy into that area, and it's gonna sit right. So for there, almost like a pure alizarin crimson, and popping it into those shadows. And just those small little adjuncts or additions can make such a difference in the beauty of the final image. When you look at that left side of that pinky finger, it is the absolute highlight. It is not a very cool highlight. For this, I'm actually just going to mix titanium white with a little bit of my light red. We get little bits of highlight through here, here. And then all of a sudden we're starting to see a nice, well-rounded image coming through. I'm now going to work back from that absolute highlight to find those mid-tones until I've connected every part of this image and I've got my first layer complete. So this is one that I prepared earlier. This piece was done over 2 hours, and while you can see slight differences in the tonal range that I've got through some of these sections, the bones are there. So I know that if I'd continued both of these pieces to completion, we would arrive at a very similar painting. The whole event of getting the painting to here has been focusing on tone and temperature, which is hard. You know, it does take a lot of time of learning, you know, when you mix this color in, what happens to the tone, what happens to the temperature? And for that, it's all about repetition. But once you get it here, it's the really enjoyable part where you zoom in on your reference image or you look nice and close, you get a very small paintbrush, and then you just work those final details, still focusing on the same concepts. I'm going to add more colors to my color palette. This is just going to enable me to really hone in on those little corners of high saturation that I want to capture, and again, introduce that diversity of color that is realism. So we've got cadmium deep red, we've got Naples yellow, yellow ochre, ultramarine blue, and transparent red oxide. I'm finishing the piece here. It's probably got a couple more hours left in it to just get those last little pops of colour and temperature. But thanks so much for tuning in. I hope you've learnt something, and I hope to see you at some of the Leicester Prize Youth Awards, and as soon as you're able to, the Adult Prize. The Leicester Prize is an amazing supporter of us artists, and I think it's a competition that can really raise your profile. So if you want to see any more of my work, please visit Instagram at Cameron Richards Artist, and I hope to see you all soon. Thanks.